Never believe that the Crusades ended in Jerusalem. While Europe celebrated victories in the Holy Land, a darker, longer war was just beginning in the frozen forests of the north. For over 2 centuries, knights wearing crosses hunted the last pagan kingdoms of Europe, and what they did there would make the battles of the Middle East look like mercy. This is the story nobody talks about when they mention the Crusades. This is the Baltic Crusade, where faith met fire and entire cultures vanished under the blade of Christianity. The year is 1200. While most of Europe bows before the cross, the lands around the Baltic Sea remain wild, untamed, and completely pagan. These are not just unbelievers. These are the Prussians, the Lithuanians, the Latvians, tribes who still sacrifice to gods of thunder and oak trees. Their priests conduct rituals in sacred groves where no church bell has ever rung. Here, Christianity is not just absent, it's violently rejected. To the Catholic Church, this is unacceptable. Europe's eastern frontier has become a spiritual wound that needs closing. And so the Pope makes a promise: if you fight the pagans of the Baltic, you get the same reward as fighting in Jerusalem: complete forgiveness of sins. Knights from across Europe hear this call. Some come for salvation, others come for land. But all of them come with swords. The problem is simple but brutal. The church wants conversion. The pagans want to keep their gods. Neither side will compromise. And when religion refuses to negotiate, war becomes the only language spoken. The Teutonic Knights arrive first in the 1220s. These are not missionaries with Bibles. These are warrior monks, trained killers who pray between battles. A Polish duke named Konrad invites them to help fight the Prussian tribes who keep raiding his lands. It seems like a smart move. It turns out to be one of history's biggest mistakes. The Teutonic Order does not just defend Konrad's borders. They conquer everything they touch. They build massive stone castles in the middle of pagan territory, each one a permanent symbol that says we're not leaving. The Prussians fight back hard. They know their forests better than any knight. They use guerrilla tactics, ambush, hit and run attacks. But the Teutonic Knights have something the pagans don't have: endless reinforcements from Christian Europe. Every summer, knights arrive from Germany, France, Bohemia, all across the continent. They call these raids the Reisen, literally journeys, like they're on a spiritual vacation. But these journeys burn villages, destroy crops, and hang pagan leaders from their own sacred trees. One Teutonic commander named Hermann Bach literally hangs a Prussian chief on a holy oak tree as a message to other tribes. This is not conversion. This is conquest dressed in religious robes. By 1240, most of Prussia falls under Teutonic control. But controlling land is not the same as controlling people. The Prussians keep their language, their traditions, and secretly, their gods. In 1242, they revolt. This kicks off decades of uprisings, brutal wars where both sides commit horrific acts. The Teutonic Order responds with more castles, more raids, more violence. By 1283, Prussia is fully conquered, baptized by force, its pagan identity crushed under the weight of Christianity. But Prussia is just the beginning. North of Prussia lies Livonia, modern-day Latvia and Estonia. Here, another group called the Livonian Brothers of the Sword wages the same holy war. They build the city of Riga, turning it into a fortress of faith. They baptize with water when they can and with fire when they must. In 1236, disaster strikes the Sword Brothers at the Battle of Saul. A coalition of pagan tribes, Lithuanians and Semigallians, ambush and annihilate them. It's one of the worst defeats in Crusader history. The survivors limp back and merge with the Teutonic Order in 1237. The message is clear: the pagans can fight, and they can win. This brings us to Lithuania, the last pagan kingdom standing in all of Europe. While every other nation bends the knee to Rome, Lithuania's kings still sacrifice bulls to Perkinas, the god of thunder. Their capital, Vilnius, has no church, only fire altars and sacred groves. To the Teutonic Knights, Lithuania is the final obstacle, the last darkness before total Christian victory. The Lithuanians are not primitive. They're organized, fierce, and smart. Their first great king, Mindaugas, plays a brilliant game of political chess. In 1251, he agrees to be baptized. The Pope crowns him King of Lithuania in 1253, making Lithuania officially a Christian kingdom. It's a masterstroke. With a crown and baptism, Mindaugas gains legitimacy, protection, and time to consolidate power. But here's the twist. Mindaugas never stops worshipping the old gods. his baptism is political theater. He still performs pagan sacrifices in secret. When his enemies betray him anyway, he drops the Christian act entirely and returns to full pagan practice. His message is clear: you can baptize a king, but you cannot baptize a culture. After Mindaugas dies, Lithuania's rulers refuse to convert. They build a powerful state stretching from the Baltic to the Black Sea, and they prepare for war because the Teutonic Knights are coming. For the next 100 years, the Teutonic Order launches annual invasions into Lithuania. Every single year, like clockwork, Christian knights ride into Lithuanian territory to burn, kill, and conquer. They call these raids journeys to Prussia and treat them like holy pilgrimages. European nobility joins these campaigns like it's a sport. You want to prove you're a real knight? Go kill some pagans in Lithuania. But the Lithuanians do not break. Their forests become graveyards for crusaders. The border regions turn into a wasteland, depopulated by constant warfare. Neither side wins. Both sides bleed. The war grinds on for over a century with no end in sight. Then in 1386, everything changes. Grand Duke Jogaila of Lithuania makes a deal with Poland. Poland's Queen Jadwiga is young, powerful, and needs an ally. Jogaila needs legitimacy and protection from the Teutonic Order, so they agree to marry. But there's a condition. Jogaila must convert to Christianity, not fake conversion like Mindaugas. Real conversion. National conversion. The baptism of an entire kingdom. On February 15, 1386, Jogaila is baptized and takes the Christian name Władysław. He marries Jadwiga and becomes king of Poland. Then he returns to Lithuania and begins baptizing his people. Pagan temples are torn down, sacred groves are cut. The eternal flame of Vilnius, burning for centuries in honor of the old gods, is extinguished. Lithuania, the last pagan nation of Europe, becomes Christian. Not by the sword of the Teutonic Order, but by the choice of a king who saw survival in the cross. You'd think this ends the crusade. It doesn't. The Teutonic Order publicly questions whether Jogaila's conversion is real. They argue at the papal court that Lithuania is still pagan at heart, that the baptism was political, not spiritual. They use this excuse to keep invading, keep raiding, keep trying to conquer Lithuanian land. But now Lithuania is not alone. It has Poland. And together, they're stronger than the Teutonic Order ever imagined. On July 15, 1410, the two powers finally collide at a place called Grunwald. The Teutonic Knights field around 27,000 men, including elite crusaders from across Europe. Facing them are the combined armies of Poland and Lithuania under King Władysław Jagiellon and Grand Duke Vytautas. The battle is massive, brutal, and decisive. The Teutonic Knights, confident in their armor and discipline, expect an easy victory. Instead, they're crushed. Their Grand Master Ulrich von Jungingen dies on the battlefield. Thousands of knights are killed or captured. The Teutonic Order's power is shattered in a single afternoon. Grunwald does not end the Teutonic Order, but it ends their dominance. The wars continue for another decade until the Treaty of Melno in 1422 finally brings peace. After 225 years of warfare, the Baltic Crusades are over. But what did they accomplish? The Church would say they brought Christianity to the last corner of pagan Europe. They built cathedrals where there were once only trees. They replaced blood sacrifices with the Mass. They brought literacy, law, and the sacraments to people who had never known them. But the cost was staggering. Entire tribes were wiped out. The Prussians, once a distinct people with their own language and gods, were erased. Their culture was destroyed so completely that today we barely remember they existed. The Livonians, Curonians, Semigallians all absorbed, converted, or killed. Whole regions were turned into wastelands by centuries of raids. And the method was not evangelization. It was colonization. The Teutonic Order did not preach the gospel and wait for hearts to change. They built castles, took land, and forced baptism at sword point. They rewarded German settlers with free land stolen from pagans. They turned a religious mission into a land grab. This is the uncomfortable truth of the Baltic Crusades. Faith and greed walked hand in hand. Knights prayed before battles and then burned villages. They took communion in the morning and hanged prisoners in the afternoon. They genuinely believed they were doing God's work while building empires for themselves. Were they wrong? Were they right? History does not give simple answers. Christianity did come to the Baltic, and it stayed. The nations that rose from these wars, Poland, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, became deeply Catholic and later Christian nations. The faith took root, even if it was planted with blood. But the pagans did not have a choice. Conversion or death. Baptism or exile. The cross or the sword. These were not free decisions. These were ultimatums backed by the most powerful military force in medieval Europe. And so the Baltic Crusades remain one of history's most morally complex chapters. A holy war that converted a continent. A religious mission that destroyed cultures. A triumph of faith that required centuries of violence. Today, the castles still stand. Marienburg, the Teutonic capital, is now a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The cathedrals of Riga and Vilnius are beautiful monuments to faith. But beneath them lie the bones of people who died defending gods we no longer remember. The Baltic Crusades were not just a war between Christians and pagans. They were a collision of two worlds, two ways of seeing the divine, two ideas of what it means to be human. One world believed truth came from Rome, from Scripture, from the Church. The other believed truth came from the forest, from ancestors, from the thunder and the oak. Only one world survived. And that survival cost more than we'll ever fully know. Subscribe to see more hidden stories from church history.